Hi, I'm Jason Bowman from ArtSpeed Creative, and I'm here with Carrie Williams, the Executive Director of Exponential NEXT, which is a community, right? It's a kingdom-minded change maker shaping the future together. Exponential NEXT, which I've been a personal fan of for years and have been partnering with, but Exponential NEXT helps kingdom leaders understand the forces shaping the future. Man, that sounds intense. Understanding the forces shaping the future of our culture, of the world, of the planet. I don't know. We're going to find out. But she and her team curate resources and research all kinds of phenomenal topics: AI, micro churches, emerging generation, and more. Lots of leadership conversation. Carrie, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be with you today, Jason. I will say, when you just said, like, you emphasize the forces shaping the future.
Yeah.
For just a split second, I just pictured like Star Wars.
Yes.
Kind of epic, which, I like Star Wars, but I wouldn't say like I'm I kind of own my own personal lightsaber or anything.
Yeah.
But
I think you have Jedi level leadership skills. And Exponential NEXT used to be known as Leadership Network. Can you tell me about that history and how it became part of Exponential?
Yeah, sure. So Leadership Network was a 39-year-old organization that was originally founded by Bob Buford. Probably many of the people listening might recognize his name. He's kind of got this epic legacy that he left with a lot of people here. I'm part of that legacy, and a lot of the churches that exist right now are part of that legacy. And so you fast forward through that legacy, and Exponential, probably about 6 years ago, acquired Leadership Network in an effort to merge the two into one kind of epic mission. And Bob Buford had his fingerprints and his DNA in both organizations, a big influencer in the exponential world. And so for Exponential, it just made sense to roll Leadership Network under the Exponential umbrella. And so there was a short season where we operated as one organization with two ministries, and that's a little bit of the history. I was the CEO of Leadership Network during that phase, as we were trying to figure out how do we leverage the rich history of Leadership Network for the sake of our 16% mission, which is 16% of churches in the United States would be multiplying or reproducing churches.
Yeah. Can you just talk about that for a second? Because I honestly, I love, all the people are probably my favorite thing about Exponential and Exponential NEXT, all the leaders and the people I met at your conferences and at your events. I just feel like, these are the kind of people I want to hang out with. But if there was a second, that mission, that 16% mission, I think for me is deeply motivating. It makes sense that it's attracted the kind of leaders to those conversations that you guys have. If you could explain like the 5 levels and what that 16% target you're talking about, what it would do.
Yeah. So you mentioned 5 levels. We tend to focus in on what we call level 4 and level 5 churches, which are churches that are looking to reproduce or multiply, primarily autonomous churches in the United States. And so all the statistics point to basically people coming to know Jesus. The percentage it is drastically increased in new church plants. As opposed to, kind of older churches that are looking to ultimately make disciples. And so in that context, in order for us to be a country that continues to grow in the faith of Christianity, we need at least 16% of churches to get on board with being a level 4 or level 5, which ultimately means that at the end of the day, their number one goal is not just to grow their church to be a bigger church, not just to grow in their own local community, but also to grow outside of that context, to ultimately reproduce themselves over and over and over again so that we can reach more people with the gospel.
I love that. I love that. And that 16%, right, becomes like a tipping point in
That's
our
right.
culture. I
That's right.
love that, where then all churches end up becoming like that, minded,
That's right.
sending out, creating new. I love that. And I think that's a real heart for, church planting, which, obviously goes back to the foundations of Exponential. I remember as a church planter logging on and watching a video stream when, couldn't afford to get to Orlando, but you guys were streaming Exponential was streaming their events and I would log on and watch, and now getting to be a part of it. Just again, phenomenal conversation, but not just, definitely have the prevailing model of churches and church planting, but I know a lot about what Exponential Next has done. Even you guys even invested in a ministry I got to be a part of, and I would just thumbs up to that. So I would love to hear kind of your even just a little bit of your. I know Leadership Network became Exponential Next right about the same time Dave Ferguson was moving back into. I know he's been a leader and a big part of the Exponential for a long time, but into the role of president. As he brought that shift and wanted to express Exponential's core audience, can you talk about both that shift, but then also some of what Exponential Next is doing in that entrepreneurial, what's coming next for the church, not just how can we get current churches to plant more? Yes, let's not stop doing that until we hit 16%, but also some of the innovative stuff that you get to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. So Exponential Next really was birthed out of Leadership Network. So like I mentioned, we took a hard look at Exponential over the last 3 years to figure out how do we reach that 16% mission, even outside of the context of being a conferencing organization, right? So most people would maybe, if they were to explain or describe who we were 3 years ago, they would say, oh, Exponential, it's conference. They do conferences, they do all kinds of conferences and content that supports the conferences. Well, there's a lot more to Exponential than just the conference. The conference is a means to the end, and the end is the 16% mission. And so as we did kind of a look under the hood of Exponential, at the same time, we were looking at Leadership Network to figure out how does this line up and how does it contribute to the mission? And so at the end of the day, as we were having conversations with Dave, and he was making kind of that shift. So Dave was one of the founders and was prayerfully considering who should our next president be. He was the interim president at the time, and there were a handful of us that were like, Dave for president, Dave for president. And so through a course of events, he made the decision to step into that role permanently. And as he was making that decision, I also made the decision to just bring to our board, I think we should give birth to Exponential Next, and kind of build on the rich history of Leadership Network, but no longer identify as Leadership Network. And so that gave birth to something new within Exponential, but something that Bob Buford had started many years ago that we are just continuing to build on, right? And so some of the kind of coined terms that Bob Buford would have was things like, our fruit grows on other people's trees, and you can do it and we can help. And as we were doing that deep dive around Exponential and where we were as an organization and reaching our mission, we began to discover that kind of the perception had shifted from the you can do it, we can help to we can do it and we want you to help us do it. And, I think that probably there was some muddiness there as we were trying to navigate COVID as an organization, as most of us, would look back and go, wow, we did some things really well and some things not really well. And so, so that brings us to today where we, went back to, okay, let's get back to the foundations of who we are, where our fruit is growing on other people's trees. How do we have an emphasis around being healthy churches that we're reproducing, not just all churches, right? So we don't want to reproduce something that's not healthy. And at the end of the day, those healthy churches typically come from healthy leadership models, right? And so we redefined kind of who our core customer was. It went from being, church planters to network and denomination leaders to church leadership. We've kind of navigated through the times of who are the most entrepreneurial planters among us, and now we use the term multiplier, and we define a multiplier as a healthy, emphasis on healthy, a healthy disciple making leader who champions reproduction. And so that's kind of our new who we're targeting. And so you can imagine that opens it up to so many different types of leaders and people, not just in kind of the prevailing model, but also the models that we're doing a deep dive in Exponential Next with folks like microchurch, digital church, meta church. We have everything from folks called the Gathering of Nomads who are, planting church-making movements in RV places all over the country, right? And so it's really cool to be a part of. I get to sit in the seat where I get to explore where God's moving on the fringes and the edges.
Love it.
Where we're seeing him move over and over again in those spaces that ultimately will lead to more movement.
Yeah.
Will ultimately help determine what the future of the church is, right? So the things that we're seeing now are just going to continue to scale and grow for the future. And so
I love that.
Church is a great example of that.
Yeah. I mean, historically, I think what a cool seat you have, because historically, that's where Jesus movements happen, is always at the edge. And so it's exciting that you guys are resourcing that, to watching, learning, resourcing, and then telling that story. What you're describing is right when we got to partner with you to refresh your branding, leadership networks into Exponential Next. How did the brand messaging process help you refine your message to the multiplier specifically?
Yeah, Jason, let me just say first, before we jump into those details, that it was a pleasure working with you and your team. Your team's brilliant, and the way that you helped us navigate through the multiple layers of conversation for Leadership Network, Exponential Next, Exponential as a whole, was just brilliant and extremely helpful. And so you guys walked us through the process of even being able to put messaging or words to what we were all sensing and feeling and trying to express. And so not only did you help us put words to it, but you put colors to it and graphics to it and looks and feels and all the things. And so it was an amazing experience, that now, for the sake of our team, not just brings clarity externally to all the folks that we get the honor and pleasure of serving every day, but also internally as a team. It brought this cohesiveness to a remote team that, if anybody who works remote out there, that clarity is kindness. And so even having that clarifying kind of process and branding, and not just branding, I hate to use the word brand. I know that's kind of your role, Jason, but I would call it more messaging or giving voice to who we really are.
Yeah.
Like getting to the root of our DNA is really what you helped us do in that process. And it was a beautiful experience. One, I think that we're just living out of every day now, that helps us be able to efficiently and effectively serve the folks around us really well.
Wow. Thank you so much. And I just props to my team for sure. I'm a big fan, but I'm biased. So I'm glad that you got to experience some of their Jedi superpowers flexing on helping you guys reach more people and be able to articulate who you are. And we've seen that over and over again, where the messaging, it isn't just for marketing. It's I just had a CEO. This is at a for-profit vertical. He's like, I need to restructure my whole company. Like, we helped him write the marketing messaging for his website, and he's like, I need to restructure everything. And then he did, and it's worked well. So you can see how it becomes internal language. Help that clarity. It helps you become a better leader and attract more people. So the people that you're attracting, the people that you're speaking to with our team, you got, our team's ability to listen and reflect and write, that multiplier. I'd love for you to talk about, who that multiplier is, some of the specifics. I know our team got to help kind of iron out how to define that along with your team, because we're not just like closing a curtain and then opening it and be like, hey, ta-da, here's your new messaging. It was definitely a collaborative experience with you and your whole leadership team. But talk to me about the multiplier, because we have a lot of multipliers listening.
Yeah. So the multiplier, I'd say we together we identified that we have emerging multipliers. So people who are aspiring, who long to ultimately make a bigger impact, a bigger difference than they can just as an individual, right? So they want to, as we would say in kind of exponential world, they want 100x. They want to multiply by 100 anything they could do on their own. So we've got the emerging multipliers. So the folks who are looking from the edges going, and I think I can dream a little bigger and I can do a little more. And then you've got the experienced, right? So you've got the experienced folks who are in the trenches of multiplying. They've got their hands dirty. They're in the middle of it. They are ultimately trying to bring gospel saturation to their communities, their cities, to the world, right? And so you've got your experienced multipliers, the folks who are very intentional about reproducing what they're doing in others, one person at a time, one community at a time. And then you've got your leading practitioners. These are multipliers who have been at it for a long time, who, when you sit down and talk to them, you feel like you're, to reference Star Wars again, which is really weird, but they're like the Yoda, right? They're the people that you sit down with and go, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn from you. That my life as an individual and the stewarding that God has put me responsible for could be so much more than what I ever dreamt. If I just hand it over to the Lord and surrender and have the mindset that I can multiply. It's kind of that picture of like, the church that, we want to gather everyone together and be in one building. And these are our people. It's a switch from that mindset to let's gather the people together and actually equip them for the work of ministry so that they go back out and multiply the efforts. And specifically in our terms, we're talking church planting, and church planting can look, inventive. It can look creative. It can be out of the box. Everybody kind of terms it a little bit differently, but we go back to minimal ecclesiology and talk about gathering for the sake of pursuing Jesus, making disciples, so multipliers. Anyone, Jason, can be a multiplier at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. I love the whole concept that you guys rally around the minimum viable ecclesiology, and I love the brand promise where we landed, because I think it does go back to the roots that we were just talking about a minute ago, but just that making that multiplier the hero, right? And that you're a multiplier. So if you're watching, and we're here to help you multiply. We Exponential and Exponential Next, here to help you multiply. I love that. That really puts them like, hey, we get it. You and anyone could be. I love that. What's ahead for you and for your team? What's ahead for Exponential Next this year? Like, what can people be looking forward to?
This year. So we're about halfway through the year at this point.
I know.
So in the next half, we'll continue to add podcast series to our podcast. So if you've not checked that out, we have an Exponential Next podcast series that highlights all of our focus areas. So within Exponential Next, every year, we do the due diligence of figuring out kind of what are the key topics, what are the key spaces that we need to lean into. And so this year, our key topic areas are microchurch next, women next, AI next, church next, which is kind of general conversations around where God's moving innovatively in different spaces and places within the church. Generation next, because without the next generation, obviously, we have no future church. And so for the remainder of the year, you're going to see us do things like workshop tracks and pre-cons at our national conferences in the fall. You're going to see the podcast series. You're going to see a handful of video series that come out around all of those topics that I just mentioned, along with things like a micro church learning community. So we want to make sure that people are able to take that next step, right? So again, you're a multiplier. We're here to help you multiply. We want to open the door of opportunity for people to take their next step into what that looks like. So we'll have some learning communities and things like that later this year. We'll also have a book release with Zondervan, with Adele Banks, Warren Bird, and Daniel Yang, which is an incredible book about the future and things we need to think about now that will help shape that future. And so those are all fun things about Exponential Next.
Yeah, I love if those watching don't know about the national conferences yet. You're talking about some of the regional conferences, one out on the West Coast this fall, one up in Chicago. Also this year, that's this 2024. And then, of course, Orlando next March. Check out what's happening with Exponential Next. I'm a huge fan. I'm probably going to be at most, if not all of those events specifically already. So, check out, I'll give a shameless plug for anything Exponential and all of the events. But it's not without an ask here. If someone were to ask you today, Carrie, if they should partner with ArtSpeak, and I know I'm confident because you just already kind of talked about my team, but what would you tell them if someone were to ask you, should they partner with ArtSpeak Creative?
Well, I would tell them exactly what I've already told a handful of people who have come to me looking for the right place to message, or to better understand branding, or even with design work. It's something as simple as a book design. So you guys designed a book for us that was just brilliant. I loved it so much that I'm like, we have to do all the books now with these guys. And so here's what I'll say about ArtSpeak and your team, Jason. While yes, you're an organization looking to, pay the bills and do all the things, I would never, ever put that as the priority based on my conversations with your team. Very kingdom-minded team. A lot of folks who are just looking to advance the gospel. Yeah. That's number one on the list. That's your priority. And it shows in everything that you do. And that's hard to find sometimes. And to find people who are genuinely authentic in that the gospel is first, and the way that you serve the gospel out of your experience and the talents of your team is secondary to your ultimate goal of the gospel. And so I would highly recommend ArtSpeak. And like I mentioned, yes, for messaging, yes, for branding, but also something as simple as design work or contract along the way of helping with things like social media. They're brilliant. So I would say you guys are brilliant.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. And a minute ago, you spoke to the multipliers directly. It was to everyone, said anyone can be a multiplier. And so if you could, as we wrap up this call, talk to the multipliers who maybe they don't know they're a multiplier yet. I know you've already given that shout out. We all could be. I'm even wondering the multiplier that's discouraged. Maybe they were in an unhealthy. I love the focus on health. We can get the leader healthy, we can get the multiplier healthy. Maybe they were unhealthy from their own choices. Maybe they were in an environment that just seemed to keep pulling the rug out from underneath them. I don't know. May or may not be speaking from my own experience. Maybe again, some of it self-created, some of it, you're just frustrated that it hasn't happened yet. Like I dreamt the multiplication. I haven't seen the result. I haven't seen the growth. With all that's going on in the world, what word of encouragement would you give to that multiplier right now?
Yeah, I think, some of the language you guys even helped us form around this, that you didn't sign up to be a manager of ministry, right? Like that when you stepped into, this calling, whatever context that is for you as a multiplier, you didn't sign up to manage, right? It wasn't like I'm going to be a ministry manager and feel exhausted and just deal with issues all the time and hit ceilings and kind of get caught up in like what we would call the hamster wheel, right? And so I would encourage you first off that you're not alone in that, it happens to everyone that, but I also will say, you don't have to stay there. And that if you're finding yourself in a place of discouragement, like Jason mentioned, you can multiply, you can do it, and we can help. It's exponential. That is what we're here to do. That is all we're here to do. We're not the multipliers per se when it comes to reproducing churches and movements. We are here to be a catalyst to help. And we are creating communities where you can link arms with other people to do that with. I'll say that, there is a price to pay when it comes to kind of stepping away from the rut or the routine when it comes to ministry. And the price is, taking a hard look at what to do differently. It's that level 4, level 5 mindset that we talk about. where it's not about building our own kingdoms. It's not about my church being the coolest or biggest, or, we offer whatever, we give this much away. It's about making heroes, right? So becoming a hero maker rather than a hero, which is some of the language that we use around our world. But you can do it. And that price that you have to pay, I would just say count the cost and make the decision. And if you're exhausted, don't do it alone. We often say at Exponential, we're a community with a cause. The 16% mission is our cause, and we definitely do it in community. And I would say the same thing about Jason and Art Speak. Like, you guys are part of that community. We would call it friends on mission, and just don't do it alone. If it's not with Exponential, find someone else to link arms with. And I'll say it's way easier to multiply when you're doing it in a network and among others. And so whether that just be among friends, or among an actual solidified network, whether that's, with 3 churches in your area, whatever that looks like, just don't do it alone.
That's good. And I would just echo that invite that you just shared to be a part of that exponential community. One of my favorite things about the last 10 years at ArtSpeak is just the privilege that it's been to come alongside almost every flavor of Christianity in North America. And boy, I find that at Exponential in the lobby. So if a multiplier is watching and they're thinking, oh, it's not for me, it's not my tribe, my group, my denomination, I've met almost everybody from multiple countries, quite literally around the world. And then my network, my personal connections and friendships grows. And I will say, I've done conferences, I've gone, I've had booths at different places. I've never left feeling like I connected with real people and have real friendships outside more than I do when I go to an Exponential event. So that's, again, my endorsement, and also just amen to what you were saying. Don't do it alone. There's some phenomenal resources, not just at the conferences, but like you're saying, there's real-time learning communities happening throughout the country, online. There's regional events. There's lots of ways that people can connect with you. We want to point them to you. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your team. And we look forward to helping you hit that 16%. I'm all in on that. Let's get 16% of churches that are multiplying and keep helping them reach more and more people.
Amen. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Carrie.